Taly Goody, welcome to Legally Contented. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, Wayne. Thanks for having me. My name is Taly Goody. I am the founder of Goody Law Group. We are based in California and have recently expanded into Wyoming. We practice plaintiffs' personal injury and employment law.
I have to ask, I know the answer, but why expand into Wyoming,
I know
of all
it's
places?
really random. I get that question a lot. So my husband, Grayson Goody, who's now a partner at my firm, is from Wyoming. So we actually brought property out there. We know a lot of people out there. We figured, why not expand there? And that's why Wyoming it is.
Well, of all terrible places to expand to, you had to expand to the cesspool that is Wyoming. You poor thing, you and your
I
husband.
know.
It's a shame.
It's beautiful. We just came back from a trip and it was amazing out there.
I don't think I've ever seen a not beautiful picture of Wyoming, even if it's like, a ghost town or it's the beautiful mountains. Like whatever you see of that state, it seems to me it's like super beautiful and super attractive. And the reason why so many people moved there during COVID.
Right. It was, yeah. I have like no neighbors around, 12 acres. It's awesome.
And that's a difference from Southern California, right? Which is a little bit of a different
Oh,
lifestyle
yeah.
than Wyoming.
Very different.
So I appreciate you joining me. I asked you to join me because you are doing what I would consider to be big things on social media. You've got about 14,000 followers plus on Instagram and about 90,000 followers on TikTok. You are a personal injury attorney. And for many people, they are saying, well, what the hell is a personal injury attorney doing with 90,000 TikTok followers, 15,000 almost Instagram followers? So I want to cover what you are doing from a social media perspective, both in terms of best practices,
Mhm.
but also how it's impacted your practice, how it's impacted the way that you are building your business, and of course, lessons learned that you might have wished you knew back when you first started. So before we get into the social media stuff, let's talk about your background because you graduated Thomas Jefferson School of Law in 2014. So tell me a little bit about how you got from graduation day after your 3L year all the way to you and your husband running your own firm.
Yeah, I mean that's a great way to start. I graduated law school. I didn't even know what type of law I wanted to even practice. I had something in my mind. I was like, maybe entertainment law. That sounds kind of interesting. I was just like this little fish trying to figure it out in this big world. So I applied to just a bunch of jobs while I was studying for the bar. And after I took the bar, I got a job in Century City, Los Angeles, working at an art law firm, doing art litigation, art transactions, and some business law as well. And the reason I chose this job was I needed a job, number one. But I also, I really wanted to, I thought it would be a good segue into entertainment law because I'm in Century City. There's all, these huge entertainment firms around. So that was kind of my mindset when I got into that job. So, about 3 to 4 years passed. I was still working there as an associate. And, it was a good experience. But at the 4 year mark, I started feeling a little bit stagnant, feeling like, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? And, kind of reevaluating things. And that's when I was at this pivotal point of, well, I could either stay at this job and see how things go. B, I could apply and, work for somebody else and just do a different job. And then the other idea my husband and I thought of was, why don't I just start my own firm? And, I was like, me start my own firm. It was something I didn't really imagine myself doing that when I was in law school. But I didn't completely, take it out of the picture as well. So after some thought and consideration, we decided to start my firm. And, when I started it initially, Grayson he was still a partner at Simon Law Group. So he's working, he was at that point probably about 7 years in working at Simon Law Group. So he says, well, you start the firm, you do this firm, do it on your own. And I'll help you here and there, like, part-time, because he loves his job at Simon Law Group. And that was the deal. So I said, okay, fine, I'm going to start this firm. I built the firm. And just recently, about a couple weeks ago, Grayson put in his notice to Simon Law Group that he's officially leaving Simon Law Group after 10 years of a really good job, great people, great experience for him. He's leaving that job and coming to me, to Goody Law Group, full time. So it's huge
That's
news.
amazing.
He's officially going to be my full-time partner at Goody Law Group. So
that is wonderful news. And we don't often break legal industry news on this podcast, but congratulations.
Thank you.
And that's a huge move. And I'd be excited to hear 1 year down the road, 18 months down the road, how it is with working with a spouse.
Yeah.
It's sometimes hard enough to have your life with one person and children, let alone when literally you marry your spouse and you're marrying the business all together. Is that connection? It could be fun times ahead. Tell me a little bit about the skills that you developed at the firm before you left to start your own firm, because sometimes when people go out on their own, when attorneys go out on their own, they were lucky that they were at a firm that maybe was business focused, that was marketing and sales focused. They maybe got great experience in terms of the substantive practice of law, and they have this toolkit that they feel very comfortable with applying to their own business. And then there are many other attorneys who maybe got great experience with depositions, but didn't know anything about sales and marketing or vice versa. And when they go on to their own firm, they're like, well, wait a second, I'm supposed to market myself? Or wait a second, I don't know how to run a case from start to finish. So tell me a little bit about what kind of toolkit you had when you left, and also what you thought you needed to get up to speed on as quickly as possible to be able to have a practice.
Right. And I was fortunate when I was at David Steiner and Associates. It was a small boutique firm, and I worked very closely with David, who owned the firm, and I helped a lot with the behind the scenes of, helping him run the firm, business administrative things that he didn't necessarily want to handle, So I kind of helped, and I got really good experience from doing that, just kind of on the business side of things. And that's when I decided, hey, I really like the business side of running a firm. I do like being a lawyer, but I think for me, I would rather spend more of my time on the business side, the marketing side, and, maybe like the pre-litigation side. And that's kind of why I think my husband and I work really well together, because he is the litigation guy. He handles all that. He does all the trials, and that's great. I will obviously help him with that, but I want that to be my priority. I want my priority to be running the firm, getting new clients, marketing, scaling, doing whatever we need to do to grow the firm. And so I think we have a good balance on that end. And I'm glad, because I know that sometimes you get partners that both want to do all the trials, or they both want to do this. So I'm glad that, he doesn't really want to do the business side of things. So I think for my last job, that was a really good good way for me to dip my toes into actually seeing how you run a firm and what goes into it.
Did part of you seeing the business of law include getting a sense of what you had to do to get your name out there and build your personal brand? Because I made a huge mistake when I left my large international law firm to go out on my own. I left their law and started doing something similar, ghostwriting, thought leadership for partners at large law firms, but it was a different network. And I didn't really prepare myself for getting my name out there, building my brand. So when I left, I could make an easy transition. I had to start from scratch. That is not the way I would recommend anyone do it. So when you were at your firm before launching Goody Law, were you cognizant of the need to start marketing yourself, getting your name out there, maybe not on TikTok or Instagram, but at least locally in the bar association, young lawyers type committees? What did you do to start branding yourself so early on?
Yeah. So at my last job, it was a very niche clientele where it wasn't necessarily like he needed to do a lot of advertising, in comparison to personal injury and employment law, where anybody on the street could be my client. It's a lot different than art law. Art law, you got kind of have the artists and these big gallery names. So you kind of know who your clients are. So I didn't have any practice from how to actually market. I didn't actually know how to do it. So similar to you, Wayne, I feel like I kind of had to start from scratch and figure things out. But once I did come out, the first thing I did was word of mouth. I posted on my Instagram, got my name out to just people that I know, just locally. My Instagram initially was just my friends from throughout my life. It wasn't what it is now, where I have 14,000 followers. It was just, hey, these are my close friends. I post my personal life on here, no marketing at all. So I started just getting myself out there. And then in addition to that, I would just take cases that these bigger firms didn't want. They're like, these are too small, below our threshold. Do you want it? And I just was like, give them all to me so I can learn. Because, I don't think I mentioned it enough, but when I switched from David Steiner and Associates, I learned completely new practice areas as well. So I had to learn a lot. I had to, number one, learn how to actually build this firm. And number two, how to actually practice personal injury and employment law. So it was kind of a double whammy. But for me, the best way I learn is to just throw myself in there. And I had great mentors along the way that, I was able to reach out to if I had questions. And that's why I was glad to just get these, cases that these other firms didn't want. And, dip my toes into it that way. And then once I settled their cases, then those clients started referring me cases. And it started kind of spiraling in that sense where word of mouth spread, and then old clients started referring me cases. But that's kind of how I started until I got on TikTok.
What about personal injury did you find to be attractive enough to base your firm around? Because to your point, art law is very niche and there might not be many communities. Los Angeles might be one of them, but not many communities can support numerous art law practices. But art law could be related to business law or IP. You see a lot of solos go into IP and trademark and copyrights. What about personal injury did you find attractive and you thought to yourself, gee, this might be something I want to get into?
Well, honestly, when I was working at my last job, I didn't feel like I was making a connection with clients in a sense of, I didn't feel like I was making a difference. It was like, okay, here, let's resolve this dispute you have with this gallery. And it just didn't feel meaningful to me. I kind of just felt like, okay, I'm just getting the work done. And then I would see my husband, Grayson, and then his firm do all these, amazing, take the case to verdict. Their clients were so grateful at the end of the cases. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to feel like I'm actually helping my clients and they're, I'm getting them out of this difficult point of their life and bringing them out, and they are just like so thankful and I'm happy to get them that result. I just think it was a better feeling. And I thought, why not? Let's just try it. And, I always thought, hey, if it doesn't work out, I can always go back and work for somebody else. I'm not stuck like just to fail for the rest of my life. If my firm doesn't work or if I don't like personal injury or employment law, you can always switch or you can always go back to another job.
Well, that's the amazing thing about the practice of law and even content marketing when it comes to law is that if PI was terrible, didn't work out for you, and you had to hang a hard right and pivot into family law or criminal law, you can learn that, right? It would take you a long time to get all the wisdom, but in terms of the knowledge and the basic cases and the basic case law and statutes, you could learn that. Like you said, you could bring our mentors or even of counsel. But then with the marketing, all of a sudden you can start talking about family law, criminal defense law, and magically people see you not as the PI attorney, but as the criminal law attorney or the family law attorney. So nothing is permanent, right, in life generally. And also when it comes to legal marketing and law firm operations. You make a great point, though, about taking cases from other firms. I have heard trial lawyers talk about this, lawyers who graduated law school in 1984, not 2014, about how the best way back then and even today with the relatively small number of trials that go on, the best way for young attorneys to get trial work is to get cases that the bigger firms don't want to touch. Either they're not valuable enough, they're not great cases, and there is a little gold mine. It might not be gold, maybe it's more like, silver or bronze, but there's a silver or bronze mine waiting for you if you want to litigate.
Right.
And you're willing to pound the pavement and get those firms to give you those cases. So what you've done is like the textbook approach when it comes to PI and trial work.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
So let's talk about the marketing. So you're on your own, you're getting these cases from referral sources, you are working them up, you're starting to get some revenue in, but at the same time, referrals can only get you so far. For many firms, they are great, but you can't always control them. And you sometimes have to give up control to those firms. You can't have your destiny and your control in your hands. So when did you start thinking about what you could do to market yourself aside from the referral relationships you may have had coming into the firm?
Right. I mean, definitely so I started my firm in 2019. And when I started, Los Angeles is very well known for these huge personal injury firms. It's competitive, and so I had to figure out a way to stand out because, yeah, as you said, I can just keep taking these little cases, but there's only so much that I can get from that. I'm going to reach that maximum capacity where I'm like, I'm not growing anymore. I'm just getting these small cases, but I got to get cases on my own. And so I actually had a good friend who was running her own marketing company at that time. And she was the one that was like, hey, you should get on TikTok. And I'm like, TikTok? I'm like, I've heard of TikTok. Remember, this is back in 2019
Sure.
when it's just, I think it was before COVID. It hasn't even blown up yet. It was just nothing. And I was skeptical. And so I kind of, I took my time to film. She helped me film my first batch of content for that. And by January 2020, I had my first videos up and I was like, this is kind of crazy. Like I'm getting a lot of views on these videos and I'm not even like doing anything. I mean, I'm just standing and saying a few things, pointing here and there, and I was like, all right, I like this. And so I got into it. I was really skeptical at first because I think what I was thinking back then is, okay, everyone's on Instagram, right? All these attorneys are on Instagram. It's boring. All they do is post these stock photos and it says, happy holidays or call us if you need it, just so standard. And how am I going to stand out with just using those stock photos, stock images? And so I figured, hey, TikTok, I'm actually like putting myself out there and people are able to connect with me. And I can put whatever content I want out there. Doesn't have to be personal injury related. It just has to be content that allows others to feel a connection with you, whether that's you're educating them, you're inspiring them, you're motivating them, putting out relatable content. That's the way to get your brand out there. And that's when I realized, okay, I'm going to keep going with this. And then it just took off at that point.
It's amazing to me how often the most successful lawyers on social media are not talking about the law very often. Maybe it's 50-50, maybe it's 75-25, with the 25 being the law. And the rest of it is the personality, the personal connection, the get ready with me type videos, the day in the life type videos. Yeah. I don't think that most older attorneys can actually fathom what's happening on social media in terms of the idea that people might actually want to talk to you and see you as a person, even when they don't need you right that moment as a lawyer, right? They are people who, they know you're a lawyer, so they might follow you because occasionally you're going to give interesting tips about the law. Maybe you're reading from transcripts, from depositions or trials or whatever. But when you actually inject your personality, that becomes like the holy smokes moment where people all of a sudden connect with you, not because you do PI in Southern California and Wyoming, but because you are who you are.
Yeah.
And you seem to have things to say and you live a life that people want to be a part of. I don't think most attorneys are ready for that. Even the older attorneys who might be great at public speaking, might love to go on a podcast, the idea that they have to churn out content frequently to be able to feed the beast, feed the algorithm, but also to connect with people, they're not ready for it.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Did you have a high comfort level with social media before TikTok, whether it was Instagram for your personal use or Facebook? Because one thing that I think people struggle with is they see the ease with which influencers and other people with large followings on social media appear to bring to the camera, right? They can look in the camera, they can smile, they look great, they're very natural, they're maybe a bit playful, maybe a bit like cringe sometimes, but still there's like a naturalness. And for many other people, the second that camera goes on or you are staring at the camera, you just freeze, right? And you feel like ashamed, you feel embarrassed. So what was your approach to social media in your personal life? And did you find yourself having to open up and get over any concerns or fears you had once you started doing more and more TikTok videos?
Right. Before I got on TikTok, I was on Instagram. I think that was or obviously Facebook, that's out there, but Instagram. But like I said, I use it for personal purposes. So mostly like my travel pictures, and I wasn't even posting reels. I don't think reels were a thing back then, so it was just photos. But when I got on TikTok, Yeah, I definitely think it took some time to get comfortable, and figure out what works for me. Like, for example, I do better when I film myself versus having someone in the room filming me. I don't know what it is. Maybe I just get shy in front of other people, even though I am filming for other people. You know what I mean? But I think when I have control of the camera and I know where it is and I know what I'm looking at, I feel more of a sense of ease. So I've learned that I don't necessarily need someone to help me in terms of filming content, uh, unless it's like getting pictures of me like walking somewhere or things like that. But if I'm like talking to a camera, I'd rather just film it on my own and do as many replays as I need to do until I get it to the point that I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And where does your inspiration come from for the topics you cover? Because obviously you can respond to people who are commenting. All right, we can put that aside for a moment. But how much of what you're doing is inspired by real questions that clients might have or experiences you had? You do a lot of law school stuff, I noticed, which tells me that you are trying to cater to and mentor informally
Yeah.
younger attorneys, either in law school or soon to be attorneys in law school or fresh out of law school. Where's your inspiration? Because on a related note, you could spend your entire time chasing trends that are on TikTok, whether it's trending audio, trending memes, and like completely get wrapped up in that and lose the connection with your audience because you are chasing these kinds of generic pieces of content.
Yeah. And honestly, I go through waves. I'm going to be honest. Sometimes I have great motivation, and then sometimes it's just tough. Sometimes I have to take a step back and, because I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to post. There's so much going on. In addition to like, balancing the firm and my family. So it definitely, I go through seasons of where I'm like, yes, I'm feeling so good with my social media. And then sometimes I'm just like, I need to be better. But I just, have to be kind to myself. We're not robots, especially with like put out content 24/7. But I think in terms of inspiration, I got into the law school content because one of the first batches of content that I put out there, I had a video that was, what do you need to go to law school or to become a lawyer? And that one went viral. That was one of my first videos that went viral. And I realized that there's all these people out there that have no idea like what you actually need to be a lawyer, and people are interested in it. And so I was like, well, that's cool. It's interesting. Like, I'm going to put some more content out there in relation to becoming a lawyer, what you need, the steps, sharing my experience. And I realized those videos for me were always the most successful. I did some PI videos, and sometimes they take off, sometimes they don't. A lot of people have this bad image of personal injury lawyers. So when I put my personal injury videos out there, I get a lot of the trolls that come in and ambulance chaser and things like that. So I try to do a good mix of that. And then in terms of ideas, I always have this running Google Doc where I'm putting the main topics that I want to cover, what is like the main pillars. And then under those pillars, I'll have just like randomly an idea will come into my head if I'm exercising or walking, and I'll just type it in just so I can remember. And then when it comes down to wanting to actually film or put things together, I go back to that Google Doc and I work off that. And then in addition to that, getting inspiration by scrolling through the FYP, which is the For You page, I get a lot of ideas from seeing other people's content, not necessarily trends, because I know trends it's a hit or miss. Your whole page can't just be trends. You have to have your own original content. And so I'll get ideas from seeing what other people are doing. And then that will kind of spark, oh, I should do that, but let me twist it so it matches this idea that I have, And so you are, I think, constantly getting idea and inspiration from other people. You can't say, oh, I don't use anyone's ideas. It happens naturally as you're scrolling. You can't help it, but that's kind of how my flow goes, is in terms of getting my ideas and putting them on paper.
I love the use of the Google Doc or the Notes app on your phone, because I joke with attorneys, if you want to be serious about content creation, even if you're writing thought leadership posts because you work at a large corporate law firm and you're serving, FDA regulated entities and you're serving their general counsel, if you don't capture those ideas when you have them, whether it's a pad, by your bed, like the classic stand-up comedians do, or Google Docs or Notes apps, you're going to lose those thoughts. And it doesn't seem like much, but I am terrible about remembering ideas. I could be brushing my teeth, and by the time I'm done, I've forgotten the idea.
Right.
If I haven't stopped and somehow recorded it, there could be dozens of topics, dozens of ideas that you could lose when you don't capture those ideas. And I feel like so much of content creation, again, no matter where you're at on the spectrum in terms of your legal practice, so much about content creation is having the ideas, knowing how to bump them out to be 1 minute long videos or a 500-word blog post, and actually executing. There are people who might have time to write, but they don't give themselves time to just kind of be bored and to kind of look around and walk. When you're walking through the city or you're running an errand, looking at life's examples, looking at life situations and saying, actually, you know what? I could probably make an analogy between something that happens on the playground and personal injury clients or litigation or insurance companies. And I think you don't have to be super creative when it comes to content creation for lawyers and their firms, but it helps to just take a step back and soak in what you're seeing. Otherwise, you're going to be creating boring content about 5 things to do if you're hit by a car in a certain county or in a certain state. So it's so important, I think, and you nailed it, to capture those ideas, flesh them out, and find different ways to bring them to life. And by the way, I totally agree with you. You are not stealing from people when you are inspired by their ideas. Just because one attorney approached something, a topic, a certain way, doesn't mean that you can never approach that topic, or you can't have some similarity, right? I don't suggest that you copy and paste what they said and pass it off as your own, but it's okay to be inspired, right? That's where new inventions, new pieces of creative work come all the time by inspiration from others, not because you were sitting in a dark cave for a silent retreat and you were flooded with ideas. Sometimes it comes from other people doing other things in the real world.
Right. Yeah. And in relation to that, if you are going to use somebody's idea, I always will just tag the person just to be nice. Hey, inspired by this person. And then that's nice. Oh, wow. They like my content and they created something based on my content.
Did you have any concerns when you started ramping up on TikTok that here you are, a non-white male attorney, and you are embracing a marketing platform that is relatively new? It's not the established Yellow Pages or a billboard or a bus shelter. Did you have any concern with, forget the general bar, but your referral sources, even people who knew you and were giving you cases before or who might give you cases? Do you have any concern that you being you, as you appeared on TikTok or Instagram, could rub these attorneys the wrong way? And did any of that actually end up happening?
So I didn't have any concern on that because I knew, hey, if people aren't going to like what I post, I know I'm not going to make everybody happy. It's impossible. And as long as I'm not doing anything that in my eyes is inappropriate, I think I have a pretty good judge of what I put out there that I believe is, is appropriate for me and showing my personality. I don't want to be somebody else. I'm just showing me. And so in terms of that, I was like, hey, if people don't like it, they don't. And in the beginning, I was one of the first, there was only about a handful of attorneys when I was on there. And so, there was gossip I would know, by my husband would hear from other attorneys, or oh yeah, she's dancing on TikTok, these kind of things that you would hear. But it didn't affect anything at all. I just kind of kept going. And if people I was kind of flattered that people were talking about it. I was like, oh, okay, thanks. I mean, you can get on there too if you want. No one's stopping you. I just kind of focused on my own path and I kept going.
How did you know that this was actually working? How did you start to see the fruits of your TikTok and social media labor?
So I got on TikTok January of 2020. I got my first big client June 2020. And that was one of my biggest cases that I settled just recently. And then just a couple months after June, I got another huge trucking case with 6 clients. And we just recently settled that one last year as well. Big settlements. And so to me, I got on TikTok, a free app. I put myself out there and I got 2 big clients within the first year I was on that app. And then not in addition to just the big clients, I still got a bunch of other leads, a bunch of other, maybe smaller cases or medium-sized cases, but those are the 2 that stand out in my head that I think back on. And the way they found me was when I posted a day in the life video. I said, day in the life of a law firm owner and personal injury lawyer. That was my title. And I remember right after that one actually went viral for some reason. I was surprised by it, but it went viral. And that's when I started getting calls on personal injury because they saw the personal injury in my title. And I remember I even got a call like December of 2020. Someone just got injured and she was like, oh, it was so weird. I just got hurt, but I was on TikTok and then I just saw your post. So I decided to call you. It was, I guess, perfect timing how it worked out.
Do you have any concern? Do you currently have any concern that as the face of your law firm, especially with Grayson coming in now, as the face of your law firm, that people might want you to handle every aspect of their case? They want you on every phone call. They want you in every meeting, whether it's video conferencing or in person. And as you think about what this firm looks like as it grows a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, do you have any concern that you being the face of it could actually hurt your ability to scale the firm if people don't want an associate, they want you because they saw you on TikTok?
I initially was like, because this past year is the first year we're actually really, really scaling, I feel. So we're within the third year, we were able to, I hired a few employees and I let go of the intake process, which usually I'm the one that would be the one on the phone call with all the clients. And so it was more of like a personal feeling like, oh, am I changing the brand of my firm? Am I changing the style of it? But honestly, I haven't run into any problems so far. My clients have never been like, I need to talk to you. I think, my staff, we train them well. So they, I hired people that I'm like, I know that you're going to be good and you're going to speak well. And I want someone that's like me, very nice and available to answer questions. That's what that's the style that we've always had with the firm. So I'm not too concerned about that. I don't know. We'll see as we get bigger. I don't know if that's going to change. As of now, we're still in that process of scaling. But as of now, I haven't faced any issues with that.
How has your social media efforts impacted your referral marketing and your referral relationships? Because I think a lot of attorneys look at social media only as a client, direct-to-consumer client type thing. But you could be found by referral sources in the area or across the country. But more importantly, inevitably, if people see you as a trusted attorney on TikTok, they're going to send you cases that you don't do. Mm-hmm. And that is a great way to obviously build a referral network. And if it's the right kind of case and you've got the right kind of ethics rules in your state, you can make a referral fee off of that. So there's a business side to that. But how has your social media efforts impacted the referral network you have?
I think it's helped me once I got barred in Wyoming. To be honest with you, I don't think that my efforts have ever really, I think maybe for employment law, I got a lot of hits, but not personal injury. I think personal injury is really hard to get referrals unless you are like the trial lawyer and there's all these firms that want to give a trial lawyer because there's all these billboards out there. These guys are all getting all the cases from, it's a competitive, getting these cases from, start A when the client gets injured. A lot of people do that. Like as long as you're advertising, you can do it. So for me, I think it didn't really help me in terms of, I think for my employment division, yes, there's always people looking for employment attorneys, but PI, not so much until I got barred in Wyoming. And now I am like probably the only Wyoming attorney that a lot of these people know. So I'm getting all these Wyoming hits, which is great. Like I recently got a hit from an attorney on TikTok who's like, hey, you're a Wyoming attorney. I have this case. And I was like, awesome. I had never even met this attorney. I've never talked to this attorney before, but they found me through TikTok. So I think it's good. And I'm actually expanding into Montana and Minnesota right now as well. So I'm hoping that kind of continues with other states. I think California is hard, honestly, unless I think it will change now because Grayson's coming in and he's, a really good trial lawyer. So I think in terms of cases to take to trial, we'll get a lot that way. But from like the ground up, not necessarily.
With social media, you are becoming very familiar to your clients before they even contact you. They are seeing you, they're listening to you, they are believing what you have to say, that they are trusting you. How does that change the client relationship, if at all? Because, some people traditionally, they would see the attorney on a billboard or maybe they got referred to them and they'd have that first conversation and it was very much like a getting to know you conversation where they weren't quite sure if they were a fit, but because people literally come to the table to meet with you, to sign the engagement agreement, they already saw you. They've heard your voice. They get a feel for your personality. I'm curious if that changes that client dynamic either for better or worse, because if people think you're buddy-buddy already because they see you all the time, that could have its own implications, as could if they feel familiar to you and there's a connection because they see you all the time.
For the most part, it hasn't changed anything. I think there's been a couple clients where it could be more on the buddy-buddy terms, or they're feeling like, oh, hey, or like, it's cool, I see your videos on TikTok, and they're really excited about it, which I'm like, oh, that's nice, So I think in that sense, it hasn't really changed. Personally, I think that it's still that professional boundary. I haven't really had a huge issue with that.
As your social media marketing seems to be doing well, are you thinking about other marketing efforts? Are you thinking about investing more time and even more time and money into social media? It's amazing to me that there are people, now these are huge influencers, but there are people who spend 50, 60, 70, 80 grand a month on employees because they are cranking out so much content. They need a video editor and a videographer and a social media ghostwriter, and they need a podcast producer. Like, they have all of this thing set up. And I'm not suggesting that you're going to be spending 50 grand a month on content, but you're doing well with social media right now. Is that making you think you should go more in on social media, or is that giving you inspiration and perhaps some confidence to try other kinds of marketing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think at this point, it's becoming very competitive on social media. There's attorneys since 2020, it's like, quadrupled what you see on TikTok, what you see on Instagram. They're everywhere. And so it is becoming more competitive to stand out, I think, on social media. It's becoming a little bit more saturated. But I don't know. I think in terms of my future, right now, I kind of post more about when I have something to provide, like value. I'm not about quantity where I need to have 10 videos go out a week. Like, as of now, I haven't been like that. I don't know if that's going to change. I also feel like sometimes when I see people that put out so many videos, it can look a little bit spammy, in my opinion. And I don't know if that's the vibe I want to go for. I think it's good for people if all they're posting is like one type of content, like if they're just posting, let me analyze this car crash video, for example, and that's all they do, then I guess maybe it is about quantity. But since my content's more, I think it's more of like well-rounded. I'm not just doing one type of content. I do a lot of different things, and I always want it to feel like me and authentic. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be scaling like that. I do think I'm going to be hiring somebody to at least help me, because I do need help, kind of just like have a manager to keep me on track when I do get busy and I can't post. I do want there to be still content going out here and there. You know what I mean? Because I go through times where, like I said, like I go through these seasons where I just get too busy and I can't get myself out there to film as much as I used to. Like in 2020, 2021, I was very consistent. And then now it's kind of just become more when I have something of value that I really want to share. And to me, it's kind of work, because it's like, I know this is a good piece of work that I'm putting out, and it gets hits, because you can see that the algorithm likes things that actually mean something, not like, oh, I'm posting just to post. I think there's a difference. The algorithm will not favor that. They'll just say, this isn't really like, what is this? No offense. I know not every piece of content has to be amazing, but I think just in my time and my schedule, I have to be more selective, if that makes sense, with what I do and what I post.
It totally does. And I think you are dancing around a topic that is very serious, which is burnout from content creators. That if you are a content creator and you are beginning to derive more of your income, more of your business opportunities, and perhaps more of your self-worth through your social media following, and the only way to keep that following up and engaged is to feed the algorithm, and to your point, pump out multiple videos a day that could be even spammy in terms of how people are seeing it, that catches up to you, right? Because you are just always on camera. Maybe you always have to be in your studio, or you always have to be made up or well-dressed, whatever style you are bringing. I see these videos sometimes. I wonder, like, is this person thrilled to be doing this video? Or can they just not wait to get this done so they can give it to their editor and then go back to their kid or back to their billable work they have waiting for them? It becomes a lifestyle choice, right? Where it's not just pay-per-click ads on Google or Facebook ads where you put content out there and it just goes out there. You are the engine behind the content creation. I think a lot of people, whether they're lawyers or non-lawyers, but especially for lawyers, they don't understand that this can become a significant part of their day. So when you are putting forth effort to create content to try and get likes and engagement, it comes at a cost. And for a lot of people, the cost is your sanity. It's the cost of you feeling engaged because you are always, especially with video, you're always staring into that camera. It can catch up to you every so often. Has Grayson given you an indication of whether he'll be a willing participant in your social media marketing efforts?
You know, he comes in my videos here and there, but he's very much like, I am not interested in it. You do it. You know, because he sees what goes on when you have to film things. It's not just an easy 5 minutes. I mean, yes, there are those videos that you can just film in 5 minutes, and believe it or not, they actually go viral. For me, the ones I spend the least time on, they go viral. But you know, I think it's important to note that for me, like right now, my priority is being present in whatever I'm doing. And so social media takes away that ability for me. I know we're talking about the positives of social media, but it has another side to it sometimes. And you have to be careful with, you know, your time, because like I have a 15-month at home. I can't just be spending hours and hours in my office filming. I'm going to miss out on her like growing up, you know? So you have to figure out a way for it to work with your schedule. Everyone has different schedules. We're all busy. We all have that. And so I always like to say, hey, be consistent, but be consistent with what works for you. It doesn't have to be, you got to post Monday through Friday, every single day, 2 times a day. If it's posting once a week, keep that up. You're showing up for your audience that expects a post once a week. Whatever works for that person. You know, I think that is the most important thing when it comes down to social media.
That's a great point. And I think it's a point that we hear more often now in the legal industry, which is self-awareness, understanding that you can't always be on all the time, whether on is literally producing social media content on camera, or if that is being on in terms of billable hours. Like at a certain point, you can't function. And do you want to be in that state where you are not doing well? Your family is wondering what the hell is wrong with you. Right. Your clients are looking for you. It can snowball pretty quickly. So yeah, I totally agree. And as we mentioned before with burnout, like there is a downside to social media. As wonderful as it could be, as life-changing as it could be in terms of building your brand and business, it comes with a cost. And sometimes you don't realize how quickly you are paying that debt until sometimes it's too late.
Right.
What other doors have your social media prominence opened? Are you getting opportunities to speak on podcasts like this, at conferences or in webinars about marketing? Mm-hmm. Are you being sought after for lecturing about actual substantive PI and the practice of law, or maybe starting a law firm? Where has social media taken you aside from clients and referrals?
Right. You know, honestly, it's opened the doors to a lot of different things. Number one, new friendships. I've actually met 2 really great attorneys that are on social media who also have their own firms. And we're actually doing like a little weekend in Florida, like vacation for the first time. I haven't met them in person yet. So we're doing that. And it's more of like a mastermind. Like we're going to like collaborate with one another, like kind of, you know, just feel each other's energies in terms of like being our own boss and being like, you know, running our firms and getting ideas off of one another. So A, friendships, I think that was, you know, a really good part of it. B, definitely speaking engagements. I actually get invited to speak at a lot of colleges, and they're like club meetings or, you know, conferences for people that are aspiring lawyers. For example, I just went to San Diego State on Tuesday, and I did an in-person presentation at one of the meetings there. So I thought that was cool. Usually they're all through Zoom, like during COVID, but now we're like doing in person. So it's exciting. And then also, yes, conferences. I've had the honor to speak at a lot of big conferences about social media marketing. So I've had that, actually speaking at one next week at Mardi Gras conference about social media with intent, which I really like. It's not necessarily social media marketing, but using social media with intent. So I'm going to speak on that next week. And, it's opened the doors to a lot of new opportunities. Like I've hosted these mock law school classes for aspiring lawyers. And I got the idea off of just posting on social media because all these people are like, what's law school class like? And so my husband and I have hosted about 3 or 4 of them already, and huge turnouts. These kids just love to come to these kind of things on a Saturday morning, which I'm like, I don't remember doing that when I was in college, but it's great. Like it's great what you can do, what you can host, what programs, what conferences. I mean, there's so many things you can do. And by putting yourself out on social media, you are building a brand. And I think for me, it is a brand, yes, to get clients, but also to open the door for other opportunities as well.
You are leaving us hanging off a cliff. Tell us about social media intent. Give us a little bit of a summary or the gist of what you'll cover with that topic.
Actually, it's a good question. I'm meeting with my panelist group after this meeting. So I don't know exactly what we're talking about yet, but we're going to go over that today. But I think the whole point is, how do you use social media intentionally? And I think that's kind of where social media is headed, because I think what I see is, like I said, it's so spammy, it's so advertising now. And I think maybe the only way to stand out now is by actually posting intentionally. And I don't know, maybe this is just a trend that I see, but I think that it's just kind of going away from the quantity posting, like post, advertisement. People don't want to see it. They get sick of it. They want to see what's real. They want to see what's authentic, what is actually something that they can get value out of, versus, okay, let me talk about myself so you'll hire me as an attorney. That's not really value for them. That's value for the person that's posting, but not value for your audience, I think. So
I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on what you were talking about in terms of the audiences in person versus in Zoom or over Zoom. Mm-hmm. People might say, well, gee, why are you as a PI attorney going to San Diego State to talk to law students? Or why are you going to this little small college? Mm-hmm. But you never know who's in the audience.
Yeah.
And forget the idea about you getting a couple more followers if you are meeting people at a conference or at a seminar or at a speech like that. But you don't know whose mother someone is, right, or what their aunt does or what their grandparent does. And if you now have unlocked maybe a client, maybe a referral source that gives you many clients, you don't know who's out there. So I think that any excuse or any opportunity to get in front of a legitimate, non-cringy, non-problematic audience, right? There's nothing wrong with going to law students or going to a law conference. Right. Accept that invitation, be willing to speak, because you never know exactly who is in the audience and what doors that speech, that presentation could open.
Yeah. And I think as lawyers that get yourself on social media is just be ready to know that anytime you put yourself out there, anytime you go to these conferences, it's your brand. You're putting your brand out there. It's not just by posting your website that's your brand. Your brand is your communication with other people. Your brand is your encounters with other people, and it could be any encounter. You could just meet someone in between a conference, there's a session, you're just going to the restroom, and then you meet someone and you're like, oh, cool. You get your next case from them. You just never know when you're going to meet somebody. Just got to be open-minded.
Literally, you don't know who's passing by you in the hallway, right? Who's sitting next to you at the table at a conference. You never know. And if you make the effort to say, hi, how are you? And then you work in kind of what do you do and where are you from? You never know the wonderful synergies that happen because you made the effort to act like a human being.
And like the law students that, some of them that are following me or the ones I speak to, I've actually gotten their parents or even them as clients, so it's just like, you don't want to just limit yourself to what you think is going to be profitable, because you do something that you enjoy, that you're passionate about, and just watch. It's all going to like flow together at the same time,
Yeah. Magic happens when you test, experiment, just try it. You don't have to be right. It's social media. You don't have to spend $100,000 up front. You can dip your toes in it, do it how you want to do it, and see if it's paying any dividends. Yeah. As we start to wrap up here, I've got a couple last questions for you. I'm curious, as someone who's in PI, do you think business-to-business attorneys could have the same kind of success on social media, especially video-based social media, as attorneys like you do who are serving consumers?
I think so. I think it depends on the content that they put out there. I mean, if you're putting out educational content that the other business that's potentially a client can see, I think that would be a way to get clients. I think it also just depends on that person. Maybe they want to just build their brand and maybe it's not about getting clients. So I think there's a lot of attorneys out there that it's not necessarily about getting clients. They've gotten themselves out there and they're building this brand. And it's a lot based on education of random topics, random law topics, and they do really well. So I think it just depends on your goal.
A dirty little secret is like the week in review or the month in review type content, where you see this often with podcasts, but you could do it with videos too, where if you are serving, let's say, the cannabis industry, or you are someone who works in hospitals and healthcare systems, you could recap with a colleague or by yourself every week, every month, what happened in the industry. And I think that's a great way to have very niche content. Yeah. Yet people can see your personality. You might make a joke about something in the news, and you're providing value on top of that. You are informing people and giving them your 2 cents as to why this deal was such a big deal, or why this litigation could be problematic for companies in the industry who are facing the same kind of business issues that this particular defendant is now facing.
Yeah, actually, and that kind of brings me to an idea. So people like that, I think what they can do is, if they're not looking out for consumers, if they're posting content, consumers are naturally going to reach out to them. And they're going to say, hey, do you know an attorney that does XYZ? Boom, that leads to referral. So maybe you just get all these consumers or whoever's looking for an attorney and you just refer them out. And that's how you make some of your business, is by building relationships with other attorneys on social media and getting a referral fee that way, depending on the state. Yeah. I know there's some states that can't have, like Wyoming, we can't give out referral fees.
Really?
So it just,
interesting.
Yeah, it really just depends.
Some law firms have referrals as a standalone business, and it might make up a huge bit of their business, where they get the clients, They refer them out in practice groups they don't cover, they don't have, and magically they get that magic mailbox money that comes in based on the referrals. What is something that you wish you knew back when you started that you know now about social media marketing, especially video marketing?
I think if I could go back to my account, I probably honestly would have posted more at that time, because I think for me, when you're first getting your account going, that is the time that you kind of get the momentum building. You get the idea of what people like, and you can build. I think back then it was easier to build a following on TikTok. I think it is harder now just because it's saturated. But I'm thinking back then, if I wanted to build a bigger following, I could have just posted more, and that could maybe have happened. But I took breaks because I love taking breaks from social media. But I mean, I don't know. Another most important tip is to just be you. I think there's a lot of attorneys that are like, I need to do videos like this person, but it doesn't end up being that person's style. You're trying to be like somebody else. So it really just try a bunch of different styles of videos, see what works for you, and you'll find out by, the traction that you get from the videos, the questions you get from the videos. And then that will help kind of keep your profile, your page kind of flowing with ideas that you can get, inspiration, because you're going to get all these questions and you're like, oh, that's a good idea, I'm going to make that video. And then naturally your page will just progress that way. But yeah, I think the most important thing is to just be yourself. Don't like be shy about doing what you think is best for you.
Okay, I'll put you on the spot. That was a backward looking question. Final question. Whip out that crystal ball that I'm sure is right next to you off camera. What do you see as the future of social media marketing for attorneys? You mentioned about it being spammy. You mentioned about advertising, but are you seeing in that crystal ball trends that you think are going to become bigger with attorneys as they continue to leverage social media and as social media evolves?
Honestly, I really think that with social media attorneys, I think it really just comes down to the personality, because I've seen a lot. I think attorneys, if they have that personality that people just, a magnetic personality, that always is a successful way for people to build their page. But I mean, in terms of trends, I think it's just going to keep going like this. I think social media is saturated. So I think it's going to be tougher to get your videos to go viral. And I think one really important thing that I always want to mention is it's not about going viral. That's not the most important thing. And I think attorneys think that they have to go viral. I think you have to build a community. That's number one. Like, your page has to be your community. It has to be a safe place for you to respond and engage with your, your friends or your, I don't like to say followers. I just feel like it sounds weird. Like, oh, look at all my followers. Like, I would just say your community and provide value. That's it. You just have to, I think it's never really going to change as long as you're, providing value to your community and engaging. I think that that's the best way you can continue to grow on social media. I don't think there's an exact formula, but that's a good way to at least grow consistently. Maybe not like that, viral grow where you get like thousands of followers in one day, but it's going to be that gradual grow, that gradual consistent grow in your numbers.
I can't imagine a better way to end this episode. Taly, please tell us where we can find you on social media and tell us more about Goody Law Group.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Taly Goody ESQ. My Goody Law Group page is just at Goody Law Group. And TikTok is also at Taly Goody ESQ. And you guys can also email me if you have any more questions. My email is Taly, Taly, at goodylawgroup.com.
We will put all of those links and all the information into the show notes or the description, depending on if you're watching this or you're listening to it. Thank you again. Best of luck with Goody Law Group. Best of luck with Grayson joining you and the future of your law firm.
Thanks so much for having me, Wayne. I appreciate it.